This is your News Source Evening Bulletin for today, Wednesday, the 16th day of September in the year 2020. I'm Gordon Mosley. Here's what we're tracking tonight. While the Guyana government has not been offering details of the visit to Guyana by the U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, a senior U.S. State Department official today confirmed that the crisis in neighboring Venezuela will form part of Mr. Pompeo's discussions with the President and Foreign Minister of Guyana. During a teleconference briefing today, it was revealed that the U.S. Secretary of State, while in Guyana, will discuss the impact of the crisis in Venezuela on Guyana. The official said the Venezuelan situation is the hemisphere's largest refugee and humanitarian crisis. In addition to those discussions, it was also revealed that the U.S. and Guyana will exchange diplomatic notes for joint maritime patrols to interdict narcotics, and that step will help provide security for the Guyanese and American people. The Secretary will also sign a Growth in the Americas Memorandum of Understanding during the visit. The MOU will permit Guyana to improve its investment-enabling environment so that the country can benefit from transparent infrastructure investment that respects Guyana's sovereignty, the State Department officials said. Issues related to Guyana's natural resources are also to be discussed. The Secretary of State will be meeting on Friday with the CARICOM Secretary General Erwin LaRocque to discuss U.S. and Caribbean issues. The State Department officials today said the Secretary will thank CARICOM for its essential role in supporting Guyana's democratic process as its electoral count dispute played out. The U.S. Secretary of State will be arriving in Guyana tomorrow from Suriname and will leave on Friday from neighboring Brazil. It will be the first time that a U.S. Secretary of State will be visiting Guyana since the country gained its independence in 1966. More news coming up in a moment.
The government of Guyana invites supermarkets and shops in all regions to submit expressions of interest to supply items for the COVID-19 Public Assistance Program Phase 2. Applicants must demonstrate capacity to supply canned and bottled food products, dry and fresh rations valued between $25,000 to $32,000 per voucher, have adequate space in their business as per COVID-19 guidelines, or for sanitation facilities. Interested applicants can uplift the expression of interest form and selection criteria from the Civil Defense Commission in Georgetown or at your nearest regional executive officer's office between 9 to 15 hours, or request by email at pavpgy@gmail.com. Kindly deposit completed forms on or before 9 hours September 30, 2020, along with copies of valid business registration or certificate of incorporation and NIS and GRA compliance into the tender box at the National Procurement and Tender Administration, Main and Urquhart Streets, Georgetown. These must be in a sealed envelope, clearly marked Expression of Interest to supply items under the COVID-19 Voucher Assistance Program Phase 2. No expression of interest will be accepted by email. The Civil Defense Commission reserves the right to accept or reject any expression of interest.
Falls, the official distributors of Castrol Marine, Mining and Power Gen lubricants in Guyana, now has in stock CRB engine oils, high-spin hydraulic oil, Vecton semi-synthetic truck oils, and Sultex cylinder oils. For the best prices, check our dealers countrywide or visit Falls Gas Station at Land of Canaan, East Bank, Demerara, or call the commercial manager on 608-4998. Castrol, it's more than just oil, it's liquid engineering.
Guyana, we've been through it all.
But as a people we have
weathered every storm
And risen to every challenge.
Because it is the people of Guyana
that gives it its strength.
all the people,
regardless of race,
class or religion.
We
are one people, one strength.
And now is our time. A time to rise. Together, we rise.
Mobile Special and all other mobile lubricants are distributed by Sol Guyana Inc. Mobile Special and all other mobile lubricants are distributed by Salt Guyana Inc. Welcome back. The Speaker of the National Assembly, Mansour Nadir, for the second time today, denied the opposition's request for questions to be posed to the Minister of Foreign Affairs about a two-day visit of the U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. That visit begins tomorrow. Earlier this week, the Speaker denied the first set of questions. The opposition reworked the questions and made a new submission. The new submission was denied again today.
2 days ago, we had an oral question without notice submitted by the Honorable Member Ms. Walton Desir. Yesterday, I ruled on that question. Yesterday also, the question was resubmitted by the Honorable Member Mr. Christopher Jones. Again today, I ruled that under Standing Order 18, it requires that questions without notice have two elements: urgency and importance, or it relates to the business of the day. I maintain my position that the question submitted does not qualify as urgent. It is important, but not qualified as urgent.
The APNU-AFC in its questions wanted details on the agenda for the meetings and discussions with the U.S. Secretary of State, and also wanted the government to guarantee that Guyana's national interests will not be compromised. The opposition also wanted the foreign minister to identify Guyana's key interests and non-negotiable policies as they relate to Venezuela. There is concern that a visit by the U.S. Secretary of State could be used to set the stage for adding pressure to Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro to step down. 3 of the 4 countries being visited by Pompeo on the trip share borders with Venezuela. The Guyana government has been warned by the opposition to not get the country involved in the internal affairs of Venezuela. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, in a statement this morning, repeated much of what was released by the U.S. State Department about the visit last evening. During the 2-day visit to Guyana, Mr. Pompeo is expected to meet with the President and the Cabinet and also have talks with the Secretary General of CARICOM. According to the U.S. State Department, Pompeo will reintroduce the promise of a values-based U.S. partnership, highlighting opportunities for more responsible and transparent private sector investment, particularly in wake of COVID-19. Pompeo will also be visiting Suriname, Colombia, and Brazil this week. Let's tell you now that with cooperation from neighboring Brazil and Interpol, local investigators have been able to identify the man who was found dead in that crashed drug-laden plane on Monday. He has been identified as 49-year-old Brazilian national Alessandro Eduardo Petrivius. The man's body was flown to Georgetown from the scene of the accident, and a post-mortem examination is to be conducted. He was the only person found in the plane that crashed with over 850 pounds of cocaine as its cargo. The other man who authorities believe was the pilot of the same drug plane has also been identified as a Brazilian national, with known links to the South American narcotics world. He was arrested with 2 other men after they were spotted with another small foreign plane at 9 miles of Sano in Region 7. He was the only person found with injuries. Sources close to the investigations told News Source today that the injured pilot had served time in Brazil previously on narcotics charges. It is believed that after the plane crashed with a cocaine cargo, he made contact with the other 2 men in a rescue effort to move the cargo. The second plane was found with medical supplies and other pieces of equipment. The crashed plane was registered in Brazil and carried the registration number PT-CFG. The investigators are working closely with officials in Brazil as they continue their probe of the accident and the drug trafficking effort. The Guyana Police Force is leading the local investigations with support from CANU, the Guyana Defense Force, and Civil Aviation. Issues related to the nation's public servants took center stage this morning as the debate of the national budget estimates continued in the National Assembly. APNU-AFC Member of Parliament and former Minister of Public Service Tabitha Sarabohali roasted the budget for its neglect of public servants. She said while the former coalition government has found itself facing criticism from the new government throughout the budget debates, she is surprised that the 2020 budget offered nothing for public servants after 5 years of steady increases.
I looked to see if there was any indication of an increase for our public servants. So much ridicule and dissent was vocalized over the past 5 years by the honorable members on the other side about what public servants ought to be given. This despite all we were able to accomplish. So I could not imagine a budget presented to the House without an attempt to match or even surpass what public servants received over the last 5 years through a substantive retroactive increase.
Sarabo Halley reminded that when the APNU-AFC took office in 2015, the minimum wage was just over $39,000. And by the time it left office a month ago, the minimum wage had increased to $70,000.
It must therefore be highlighted that the minimum wage for public servants, including teachers, nurses, doctors, members of the Defense Force, Police Force, and the security services, increased annually under the APNU-AFC government. Imagine, Mr. Speaker, in 2015 we raised the minimum wage by 26%, 2016 by 10%, 2017 by 20%, 2018 by 7%, and 2019 by 9%. Overall, minimum wage was 5% from $39,570 to $70,000.
The Member of Parliament also lashed out at the government for the firings of scores of public servants that it deemed to have been political appointees, when many were not. Sarabo Halley noted that while the budget presentation focused on democracy, the actions of the PPP and government is less than democratic. She also said she is hoping that the government will allow the work of the Bertram Collins College for Public Servants to continue, since it has been lifting the quality of work in the public service. While the government did not announce any increases for public servants in the 2020 budget, it did announce a 2-week bonus that will be given to members of the joint services alone. In the courts, an elderly man and a juvenile were among 6 persons charged today for the beating murder of Bass Settlement resident Pretty Paul Hargobin. The incident took place at Bass Settlement West Coast Berbice last Wednesday during a protest by residents of the same community. The 6 are accused of attacking and beating Hargobin into an unconscious state after he left the car and fired gunshots in their direction. He died while being rushed to hospital. At the Fort Wellington Magistrates Court today, the 6 accused were not required to enter a plea to the indictable murder charge. Appearing in court to face the murder charge were 22-year-old Devon Karan, 26-year-old Ricardo Shivlal, 60-year-old Jagdat Kalu, 35-year-old Marlon Dharamdai, and 38-year-old Shiohal Shivchand. The other accused is 17 years old, and therefore his identity cannot be reported. The 6 men have all been remanded to jail and will make their next court appearance later this month. In a statement on the incident last week, the Guyana Police Force reported that 35-year-old Pretty Paul Hargobin was beaten to death after firing a shotgun at protesters in the same Bass Settlement community where he lived. The incident took place as there were other protests along the same West Coast Berbice area following the murder of teen cousins Isaiah and Joel Henry. Family members of the dead man said after he was badly beaten, the mob of villagers set fire to his car. They believe that the attack might have been triggered by other issues in the village and disagreements that Hargobin had with some of his own villagers. A disturbance by inmates of the Lusignan prison over coronavirus fears was quelled this morning, as the prison authorities assured the inmates that additional steps were being taken to ensure their safety. 2 inmates of the Lusignan prison tested positive for coronavirus. The test results were made known yesterday. This morning, prisoners refused their meals and loudly voiced their concern about coronavirus in the prison. They also used the protest to call for speedier trials and for the granting of bail for those with minor offenses. In a statement, the prison authorities said the officer in charge and other senior prison officers and joint services ranks were able to calm the prisoners. They assured them that steps were being taken to appease their situation at the location. The Ministry of Health has started to test all those persons who were in contact with the 2 prisoners who tested positive for COVID-19. The ministry will also aid with the daily sanitization of the facility 3 times per day. A team of doctors and nurses has also been deployed to the prison to assist the medical team that is based there. Speaker of the National Assembly, Mansour Nadir, this morning announced that 14 members of the parliamentary staff have tested positive for COVID-19. Over 100 staff members were tested last week after Nadir's test came back positive, and then a few days later the test results for 2 other staffers also came back positive. The clerk of the National Assembly, Sherlock Isaacs, was also tested. His result came back negative. Most of the staff members who have now tested positive had no signs or symptoms of the virus, but they are now in home isolation as the Health Ministry attempts at contact tracing. The Speaker said the pandemic has taken a toll on the parliamentary staff, and the Parliament will be ensuring that they are well taken care of. Mr. Nadir has been presiding over the parliamentary sittings from his home since his positive test result. Back in August, 2 members of the government side and 2 members of the opposition side also tested positive for COVID-19, but that was before the official opening of Parliament. Guyana currently has more than 550 active COVID-19 cases, with the majority of those persons in home isolation. Scotiabank Guyana today announced that it has temporarily closed its Carmichael Street branch after one of the staff members there tested positive for coronavirus. In a statement, the bank said it is enhancing a number of health protocols in wake of the positive case. The bank already had a number of systems in place. The employee who tested positive was sent on quarantine after exhibiting symptoms. All the staff members were informed of the decision. Scotiabank said the Carmichael Street branch will remain closed until further notice, and it is encouraging customers to take advantage of its online banking platform. Across the region is coming up next.
The government of Guyana invites supermarkets and shops in all regions to submit expressions of interest to supply items for the COVID-19 Public Assistance Program Phase 2. Applicants must demonstrate capacity to supply canned and bottled food products, dry and fresh rations valued between $25,000 to $32,000 per voucher, have adequate space in their business as per COVID-19 guidelines, or for sanitation facilities. Interested applicants can uplift the expression of interest form and selection criteria from the Civil Defense Commission in Georgetown or at your nearest regional executive officer's office between 9 to 15 hours, or request by email at pavpgy@gmail.com. Kindly deposit completed forms on or before 9 hours September 30, 2020, along with copies of valid business registration or certificate of incorporation and NIS and GRA compliance into the tender box at the National Procurement and Tender Administration, Main and Urquhart Streets, Georgetown. These must be in a sealed envelope, clearly marked expression of interest to supply items under the COVID-19 Voucher Assistance Program Phase 2. No expression of interest will be accepted by email. The Civil Defense Commission reserves the right to accept or reject any expression of interest.
Delvac and all other mobile lubricants are distributed by Salt Guyana Inc. Mobile Delvac and all other mobile lubricants are distributed by Salt Guyana Inc.
We all know a strong educational foundation is a key to successful learning. Global Technology combines award-winning curriculum with innovative technology and teacher support to help students reach their potential. Our online platform creates an engaging learning experience. Using any device, you can be a part of amazing class discussions, collaborate with others, and have access to virtual learning software. With our multiple payment methods, you will never have to leave home. Find out how Global Technology can allow you to learn anything, anywhere, at any time.
Falls, the official distributors of Castrol Marine, Mining and Power Gen Lubricants in Guyana, now has in stock CRB engine oils, high-spin hydraulic oil, Vecton semi-synthetic truck oils, and Sultex cylinder oils. For the best prices, check our dealers countrywide or visit Falls Gas Station at Land of Canaan, East Bank, Demerara, or call the commercial manager on 608-4998. Castrol, it's more than just oil, it's liquid engineering.
We are legions of men standing strong, but never too proud to stoop and help someone. We must send a clear signal to all. Do right, walk in upright ways, knowing that's what being a man is all about. And ever aware that things will only get worse when good men do nothing. Stand strong. Be the one to live right.
Mobil Delvac and all other mobile lubricants are distributed by Salt Guyana Inc. Mobil Delvac and all other mobile lubricants are distributed by Salt Guyana Inc. Across the region right now, deeming it a waste of both the courts and the police force's time, Barbadians will no longer be charged for having a quantity of marijuana commonly referred to as a roach or a spliff on the streets. That means anyone in possession of 14 grams or half an ounce or less of marijuana will no longer be arrested and forced to appear in court, thereby earning a criminal record, which in turn has implications for employment and ability to travel. Dame Sandra Mason announced the proposed policy change of the Mia Mottley administration during the delivery of the throne speech in yesterday's historic sitting of Parliament. The Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Act will be amended to reflect the move, but possession will still be against the law and remain punishable. Well, from the 18th of September, a CARICOM travel bubble will be established to resuscitate the inter-island travel and tourism sectors, which have been struggling to survive since COVID-19 cases were detected in the region in March. CARICOM heads took the decision following a special emergency session last Friday. The leaders were guided by a report from the Caribbean Public Health Agency, which provided recommendations on how the bubble would operate and laid out the eligibility criteria for countries to participate. The report recommended that only those countries with no cases and those in the low-risk category would be allowed or should be allowed to participate in the bubble. Heads of government agreed that travelers from countries within the bubble would be allowed entry without being subjected to PCR testing prior to arrival and would also not have to undergo quarantine restrictions. Travelers may, however, be subjected to screening on arrival. Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados, Dominica, Grenada, Montserrat, St. Kitts, Nevis, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent, and the Grenadines will be in the bubble as they presently meet the criteria. Other member states and associate members will be allowed to participate when they meet the criteria. And finally tonight, international news. The BBC reports that Hurricane Sally has brought historic and catastrophic flooding to the southern U.S. after making landfall. The storm's sluggish speed, roughly 5 miles per hour, increases its capacity for destruction, pummeling coastal states with heavy rain. The National Hurricane Center reported flooding from Tallahassee, Florida to Mobile Bay in Alabama. It also warned of a life-threatening storm surge and river flooding inland as far as Georgia. Hurricane Sally is one of several storms in the Atlantic Ocean, with officials running out of letters to name the hurricanes as they near the end of their annual alphabetic list. And that's your News Source Evening Bulletin for tonight. I'm Gordon Mosley reporting.